So you've reduced your entire bass rig down to a HX Stomp and some wireless systems. You rock up to the gig, really happy that you haven't had to drag everything with you, cabs, everything. You plug in, you turn it on, you go to play your bass and there's a whole bunch of hiss. Your excited face turns into a frown.
No.
Has this happened to you? I'm Twisty. In this video we're going to have a look at what causes that hiss and how you can get rid of it. Let's go. At a gig last week, I rocked up, same situation. A HX Stomp, my guitar wireless, the bass, and that's pretty well it. Plugged into the front of house, big foldback speaker next to my head, it was going to be awesome. And then a hiss. Didn't matter which cable I used, a 1/4 inch to XLR cable, XLR to 1/4 inch adapters, I tried a few, the hiss stayed. What I was experiencing was a hum as a result of a ground loop. The ground loop is created when you have different pieces of your audio gear plugged into two different power points, which are on two different or more circuits. So for example, my HX Stomp was plugged into power on the stage, but the PA was plugged into power off the stage. They were on different circuits, and that differential was causing me hum. The technical answer to this is that the ground potential between power circuit 1 and power circuit 2 is different. This difference in potential can cause current to flow through the XLR cable or your audio cable. That then manifests itself as an audible hum or buzz coming from your cable. Standard electrical wiring like this, depending on the country you're in, has 3 main wires. The red one, the hot stuff comes out of here. The green one, or in this case it's a green and yellow banded, is the neutral. And then the black or a brown one is the earth or the grounding. Now the grounding wire or the earth wire is called that because at some point in the circuit, that wire is connected to a stake which goes into the ground. And it allows for any runoff current to go to an earth or to a safe spot. This is the one that is used to trip when you touch two things together. Instead of electrocuting you, it'll go to a trip. It's based on this. Hopefully, earth is earth, and the voltage coming through that cable should be 0 volts. But sometimes, depending on the cable size, the shielding, the amount of current that's driving through it, sometimes a circuit might have more than 0 current, maybe up to 1 volt. This then becomes that potential difference between the two circuits. Similarly, an XLR cable or microphone cable has 3 pins. Pin 1 is the ground or neutral. Pin 2 is the positive, and pin 3 is the negative. So similar type of setup. Both circuits, the audio circuit and the electrical circuit, have a ground. So what we're seeing is when there is a difference in potential between the two ground voltages, that extra current is then travels across the audio cable as another way to get to ground, causing that hiss. Now, if you see my recent video on do you need a DI pedal when you're using modeling devices, you'll recall that all of the major released products, the Line 6 Helix, the HX Stomps, the Quad Cortex, the Fender Toemaster Pro, etc., they all have balanced outputs. And that balanced output is designed to reduce the amount of noise across that cable length. The bigger ones, so the ones not the HX Stomp, also have a ground lift function, whereas the HX Stomp doesn't. Now, in the majority of places I've played to date with my HX Stomp, this has not been an issue. So obviously I've had good electrical circuits in the venues I've played. However, it wasn't the case this time. I got the hum and I don't want it again. So having a general understanding of what's causing this hum, how do we go about fixing it? So as I said, on the larger devices, they have that lift switch. Often it's labeled lift, or it might be ground lift. And what that does is it disconnects pin 1, the neutral or the ground, from the XLR cable. It disconnects that pin from the signal, therefore breaking the ability for that extra current to run along that cable because there's nowhere for it to go to. And that's what eliminates that hum. But if the HX Stomp doesn't have that feature, what can we do? Well, assuming we don't want to go and replace that with a Helix or a LT or a floor, and rewiring the building for your gig isn't something that the venue's prepared to do, we're going to have to introduce another appliance or another device into the circuit. Now, discussed before on other videos, there's 3 options you can go with. There is your amplifier. So if you bring your amp, most amps like my MarkBass has a balanced output with a ground lift feature. So I could connect my bass, my Stomp to that and then use that DI connection out. But since I didn't want to bring my amp, I just want to use my HX, that sort of mutes the purpose of just going with HX Stomp. So the second one is a line isolator, which is specifically designed to remove that ground loop and noise. Or there's a DI pedal with a lift component to it. Let's look at line isolators. Line isolators are designed to work with line level equipment like our HX Stomp or a keyboard. And they have the isolation function which allows that to cut pin 1 on the XLR and remove the ground loop component. They also mostly have a transformer of a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you send 5 decibels of sound in, 5 decibels of sound will come out. Radial Engineering released at NAMM 25 a Highline series of line isolators specifically designed for amp modelers. And in fact, if you look at the diagrams on their website, the modeler they're using looks pretty close to what a HX Stomp looks like. So they're designed to take the line output as a 1/4 inch and as an input as a 1/4 inch and output an XLR balance signal with a line lift, ground lift component, which will remove that hum. The sound you send in will be the same level as the sound you come out. Steve Stalacci's done a video on that. Unfortunately, they weren't available in Australia when I'm doing this video or when I had that problem, and so I couldn't use it. They do have a mono version and a stereo version, so I do recommend you have a look at those, or at least check out Steve's video as he explains the value of them. Now, the third option was the DI box. Now, a DI box's primary function is to take a unbalanced high impedance volume and convert that to a low impedance balanced volume output. This then allows that signal to travel longer distances without any noise or signal degradation. That's its primary use. A TRS 1/4 inch to an XLR output cable will do the balanced part. It will convert into a balanced signal. And as I said, the HX Stomp has a balanced output, but that cable then won't be able to do the ground loop function because there's no lift switch attached to it. Hence the need for that DI. So the ground lift function on the DI works exactly the same way as the one in the line isolator. It will cut pin 1, it'll remove that hum and let you go forward. However, the difference between the line isolator and the DI is that while the line isolator had a 1-to-1 ratio, the DI will have a different ratio. So that means that when you send 5 decibels in, 5 decibels won't come out. It will be a lower number. Now that will depend on the ratio of the transformer in the DI box, and also depends on whether you're using an active or passive DI, depends what that volume will drop to. When you're using a line isolator or the DI, make sure your HX Stomp is set to line out rather than mic out. If you're going straight to the desk, you can use mic out, but going into the DI or the isolator, make sure you've got line output. At the time I had this challenge, as I said before, the Highline series wasn't available to me. Also having a look at them, both models, the mono and the stereo, are too large to fit on my pedal board. So on my pedal board, because I've got two Wi-Fi because of my Attitude base, I only have a small gap to fit another device in, or just hang it off separately. I wanted to try and keep it compact. So I had a look around at their other isolator ideas. Now in their line isolator range, the Ice Cube device would have been perfect, right size. However, it's XLR to XLR, so I would still need to put in a 1/4 inch to XLR converter cable or adapter, and so that would have just made it more complex. So I discounted that one. The SB6 met some of the requirements. However, it was, again, the footprint of it was too big for my pedal board, and also it's designed to go between your effects and your amp, and so it only had 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch. So again, I would still have to do a 1/4 inch to XLR conversion. So again, tricky. Both of those would have been perfect. They would have given me the 1:1 ratio of sound in to sound out that I was looking for. It was giving me the the ground lift function that I needed, but both the footprint and the connections on them didn't meet my requirements. I think that's why Radial have now introduced that Highline series, which is 1/4 inch in and XLR out to fit that exact use case. They just need to make it a bit smaller for me. In their DI range, they have a StageBug form factor, which is quite small, fits perfectly. I've used the SB5 to connect my iPad to the front of house, and you can see that video up here. And so I had a look at their SB2 device. So as you can see, the SB2 is quite small and compact, fits in my hand. It has a guitar input or bass input. It has a through, so I can go, if I wanted to, I can go into here and out through the XLR connection. So it does that 1/4 inch to XLR conversion that I needed. I can go XLR out to the front of house. It has a ground lift on it, so I can get rid of the hum. And I can also send through the through to a stage monitor if I wanted to, or something else, my bass amp or something else. Another cool feature of these though, like the stereo version of the Highline isolator, is that if you put two inputs into this, it will mono sum them. Now, the HX Stomp, if you use the left mono input, also does a stereo to mono consolidation. But if you didn't want to do that and you wanted to come out stereo from your HX Stomp and only have the consolidation happen at the DI, this is a perfect way to do that. Apart from the size, some of the other features of this, it's got full dynamic range, so it will treat audio signals from as low as 20 Hertz up to as far as 20 kilohertz. I usually roll off my cabinets at 5 kilohertz, so the top end won't be used or transmitted through here, but it will take that if that's what you're looking for. Now the transformer ratio on this is a 1:12 ratio. So what that means is if I send a signal in, the output will be 1/12 of the volume. So as some examples, and I'm just going to read those. If I send an output from my HX Stomp at 0 dB, so neutral, it's going to output at -21 decibels. So what will get to the desk will be -21, which will be quite low. If I output +5 decibels, so I set the output of my HX Stomp to +5, then what will come in will be +5 decibels, but what will come out will be about 16.5 decibels. So still a little bit too low. If I then look at a +10, so I increase the volume to +10 in my output, then what's going to come out here is around about -11.5, -12 dB. So that's about the level that I'm looking to come out. If you check out my other video here on setting your Helix levels, you'll see that -12, between 12 and 6 is where we're looking to get to. So again, if I'm setting the output to about 10, the output going to the desk will be around about that -12 mark. So you can then play with that as you like. Or the sounding might want you to increase a bit or decrease a bit. Bit of more fiddling than straight out from using an isolator, but nothing too drastic. Now to connect it up, I like these EBS flat cords because they flatten off and they're great. But all I'm doing effectively is I'm going input to here. I'm connecting to the output of my HX Stomp, and then I'm just slotting that in the middle there, and the XLR cable will come off the back. Now obviously I tidied that up a little bit, but for demonstration purposes, let's see what I can do. It goes around. I didn't quite give enough cable length, but there you go. So I can move it like that. So again, this form factor works really well for me. It gives me that butt. Now you may have enough room on your pedal board to take the Highline series, and if you can, fantastic. I couldn't, but again, as long as you know that there's a volume drop, this isn't a bad option. Ground loops are something you're going to have to deal with in your gigging career, unless you're only playing at home and you can control the grounding and the circuits in your house. But if you're gigging, depending on where you go to, you're going to have to deal with it at some point. But it doesn't have to be something that you can't control. Now you can rock up to the gig and expect the soundy to have something to solve that problem for you. And look, 9 out of 10 times they might, but you're not in control of it. And you're also not self-sufficient. The two ways we talked about doing that is to get a line isolator or a DI pedal. If you're not using a HX Stomp, or I suspect the Quad Cortex Nano is probably in the same boat, then you would have a line lift button on your bigger unit. And so you won't need to do this. But if you don't have one, the two options I've recommended are the line isolator, which gives you an even 1-to-1 ratio of sound coming in to sound coming out. One specifically designed for that is from Radial Engineering, their Highline, which is 1/4 inch in, XLR out. Most other line isolators I had a look for on the internet were either XLR to XLR or 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch, which would mean you would have to get an adapter to come from your HX Stomp anyway. Alternatively, there's a DI. And my preference is for form factor is the StageBug series from Radial Engineering. I just like them. They're metal, they're bulletproof, they're really compact. I've now got one for my iPad and one for my Helix. They both sit in the gig bag. If I don't need them, I don't need them. But if I do, they're there. Both have line ground lift switches on capability. The only thing you have to realize the difference between the line isolator and the DI is one's 1-to-1 ratio and the other one, the DI, you'll have to make some output adjustments from what you would have normally sent straight to the desk. But again, shouldn't have been that big a problem. So if you watch this video, you should see how to level set all of your volumes, set the right output, and therefore just adjust that when you know what your DI is going to be doing to you. See you next time.